All right, hello and welcome back to online English class. Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to begin the process of preparing for your Unit 5 test. We're going to be taking the next two class periods, Tuesday and Wednesday, in order to prepare for your test, which we're going to take on Thursday. All right, I'll send the prompts home on Thursday, a copy of the test specifically for you. You'll write the test and then you'll resubmit the test, and you'll submit your electronic copy of the test to me by Friday at 3 p.m. Okay, so it'll be a little bit different than normal, but I'll explain those procedures in more detail as we approach them. There'll be emails. I'll try to make this as clear as absolutely possible, which has been my intent throughout the course of this entire extended cancellation. All right. Obviously, you don't need to worry. You're in the Honors English 3 class if you're watching this video, so you don't need to worry about your Unit 4 progress check. You do need to make sure that your OTNs are complete, including both your OTN on Robert H. Clancy's An Un-American Bill, OTN 9, and OTN 8 on Ellison Durant Smith's argument, Shut the Door. Okay. And the only thing that you have to do now is to start getting ready for your Unit 5 test. Okay, so today we're going to take a portion of the class. This video shouldn't be too crazy long, and we're going to take the rest of this class just to discuss the basic content that we have learned throughout Unit 4 and Unit 5. Okay. So to reiterate what the basic components of the test are before we get into talking about the content, are first, you're going to write some analytical short responses if you're in the honors course. That's going to require you to show your knowledge of the content that we've studied over the course of the two units, Unit 4 and Unit 5. Okay, so you might be asked a question like, analyze and explain Carnegie's use of evidence to support his claim that the benefits of the laws of competition outweigh the cost in paragraphs 2 through 5 of the Gospel of Wealth. Okay, I might also just say analyze Carnegie's use of evidence to support his claim in paragraphs 2 through 5. So you would have to, using your knowledge of this document, know what his central claim is in that section of the document, and then explain how he evidences or supports that claim with reasoning and concrete evidence. All right, so it's essentially logos analysis. You're analyzing the way in which various speakers, all right, have defended their claims in their arguments. Okay, so that's for honor students, and then for all students, all right, you're going to write an argumentative essay in response to one of these two prompts. You get to choose, all right? And then you can spend the rest of this week preparing and collecting and outlining evidence that supports your claim. All right, now, if you've already downloaded and printed out this study guide, throw yours away and reprint it out. All right, I've reattached altered prompts. They're the same basic questions, but I've changed the language, and I want us all to be operating from the same exact prompt with the same exact language. Okay, so this particular prompt is about is requiring you to write a well-reasoned argumentative essay about how wealthy Americans should approach economic inequality and the improvement of the quality of life of poor Americans. Okay, so this major idea is taken up in both the Gospel of Wealth and also Jane Addams' The Subtle Problem of Charity. All right, which is listed down here in your text to study. But what you are going to be doing, and we'll talk about this more tomorrow in our review session, all right, but what you're essentially doing here is developing a claim of policy about how wealthy Americans, how individuals who have fortunes, who have extra money, excess wealth, should approach economic inequality. What should they do about it? Your answer can range from nothing, they shouldn't do anything, to a broad range of proposed solutions or proposed approaches. You will have to support your assertions with reasoning. Why is that the way they should approach it? Why is it right for them to approach it in this way? Why is it most beneficial for them to approach it in this way? Okay. Second prompt, okay, comes from Ellison Durant's Shut the Door. He supports his central claim with two basic assertions that are at the heart of many expressions of white nationalism or white supremacy. He argues that Anglo-Saxons have a history of valuing personal freedom and the rights of the individual, which makes them distinctly capable of self-governance in a democratic society. And then he also asserts that non-white races do not have a history of valuing personal freedom and individual rights, so they are not suited for self-governance in a democratic society. Your role, your job in this essay, all right, is to refute Smith's assertions. Okay. So you're going to deconstruct these assertions using secondhand or firsthand evidence to support the claim. Okay. All right. So first leg of the studying process, the first leg of getting ready to do both of these things. All right. Before you get into actually writing and outlining and collecting your evidence, you need to basically understand some essential foundational concepts that we've been unpacking throughout the course of the unit, all right? So follow me here. Here's our content knowledge, right? We go from inductive logic to deductive logic. We talk about the Toulmin model. We talk about claims of fact, value, policy. Thesis construction, whether your thesis is open or closed, evidence use, whether it's first-hand or second-hand, whether it's based on personal experience and anecdote or interpretations of current events or historical information or expert opinion or quantitative evidence or literary sources and conventional wisdom. We talk about logical fallacies, which is basically misused evidence. You don't need to, if you're in the honors class, you don't need to remember every single one of these particular fallacies, but you just need to understand that misused evidence is irrelevant, inaccurate, and insufficient. All right? But the big idea at stake throughout the course of the unit, stick with me here, this is an important concept, is reasonable argumentation. All of the stuff that we've been talking about has been an attempt to help you make reasonable arguments. Now, what is a reasonable argument? It is a claim that is supported with evidence about a contentious issue and features commentary that explains the relationship between your evidence and your claim. Okay? Now, a really important thing for you to understand when writing arguments is the prompt. What is at issue? In school, you get a prompt. That tells you what the issue is, all right? In life, you might not get a prompt, okay? But whatever issue is at hand, whatever issue is being discussed, all right, you need to understand whether or not you're having a conversation about the truth of a thing, the value of a thing, or what we should do in light of what is true and what is valuable. Claim of policy, claim of value, claim of fact. Understanding what kind of conversation the prompt is asking you to engage in is the first step to developing a claim that reasonably answers and satisfies the requirements of that prompt. So, in your studying process today, you need to look at the two prompts that we already discussed on the front side of this study guide, and you need to identify what kind of conversation that you are entering into. What kind of prompt do you have, right? And in light of what kind of prompt you have, that's going to shape what kind of evidence or reasoning or supporting arguments that you're going to develop to support your claim. Okay. Now, when we talk about thesis construction, we're having a conversation about how to articulate your claim. In school, we want you to have a clear thesis statement. All arguments have thesis. All right, all arguments have a thesis or a claim, but some arguments that we read don't have a thesis statement. The distinction between a thesis statement and a thesis is just an assertion. All argumentative documents feature assertions. A thesis statement is one sentence that affirms the central assertion or central portion or purpose of a certain kind of text. All right? So what is your thesis going to do in your essay? It is going to answer the prompt with a central claim and introduce the evidence or the supporting arguments that are going to support that claim. Everyone get that? What's your thesis going to do? It is going to answer the prompt with your central claim and then offer reasoning, supporting arguments that support that claim. Okay? All right, we would call that a closed thesis statement because it offers a central claim and then it offers support of that central claim. Okay? Now, when we talk about inductive logic, deductive logic, and the Toulmin model, all of these are just logical structures that order what we call a line of reasoning. And a line of reasoning, okay, is basically something that establishes a connection between evidence and a claim. All right? So, a line of reasoning or logical structures help you organize and order your evidence in such a way that it persuasively and effectively supports your claim. At times, you'll need to use induction, all right, in order to build and illustrate the validity of the assertion that you've made. Inductively, using concrete, specific evidence, as expressed here. Other times, right, you'll need to establish and describe certain premises or assumptions, warrants, as called in the Toulmin model, okay, or major premises or premises in deductive logic. You'll need to describe those certain foundational values, those foundational premises, so that you can apply them to specific criteria in support of your claim. All right? Now, these common forms of evidence that we discussed, you need to show me your ability to use both your personal experience and that which you've experienced firsthand in your life alongside secondhand forms of evidence that maybe alludes to or references expert opinions or quantitative evidence or historical information. All of this stuff requires, ready, ding, 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 a little bit of research, all right? So when you're cultivating your answer to the prompts on the front side of this page, you might want to do a little bit of research. You might want to hop online and pull some quotes from expert opinions. Make sure you cite them, okay? You don't have to cite them in MLA for your test, okay? But you just need to attribute them in the quotation. Let me know who's speaking and why they should be listened to in this particular argument, okay? All right. Now, to sort of illustrate these concepts, really basically, I want to give you an example of a simple argument, all right? And explain all the different pieces of this argument and all the different areas that would make this argument, all the different steps and moves that we would need to make in order to make this argument cogent. All right, so let's start with the prompt. The prompt for this simple argument is, what is the best form of human government? Okay, so think for a moment. What is your answer to that question? As a red-blooded American, your answer to that question should be democracy. Okay? Your answer should be democracy. But on what grounds are we going to defend this claim of, ready, value? We're talking about what is best or what is good. We're having a conversation about the value of a thing. Okay? So how are we going to support our value claim? Democracy is the best form of government. Okay? Well, we need some supporting reasons or supporting arguments, or as called in the Toulmin model, we need some data. We need some becauses to support our therefore, our central claim. Okay? Well, Here's 2 good reasons why democracy is the best form of government. Because it acknowledges the rights of all individuals to be equally represented in and to consent to the political system that orders their lives. Okay? So I've got 2 supporting reasons here that support this central claim, this simple central claim that pretty much anybody who is an American should also agree with. Okay? Democracy is the best form of government because it acknowledges the rights of all individuals to be equally represented in and to consent to the political system that orders their lives. So 2 supporting reasons. 1, it acknowledges your right to be equally represented, and 2, it acknowledges your right to consent to your government. All right? Now, in order for this argument to actually support this claim, there is a foundational premise or an assumption or a warrant that we are already assuming is true. And for this argument to be persuasive, you would need to make this distinction. You would need to establish this premise in your own reasoning. Okay? You might even want to devote a paragraph to it if you were writing this as an essay. You would need to establish the fact or establish the foundational premise that a good form of government is one that protects its citizens' basic rights, as opposed to perhaps the argument that a good form of government is just the most efficient form of government, or the most stable form of government, or the form of government that leads to the least amount of social instability. Okay? Well, democracy is definitely not the version of government that leads to the least amount of social instability. Okay? Democracies can be very unstable and can feature deep rifts in a society because you've invited lots of different people with lots of different perspectives about what the law should be like and how our society should be governed into the process of talking about how the government should work. Okay? You've invited a ton of different people into that process, and so naturally it's going to be a complicated, inefficient process. The most efficient form of government is a tyranny, where there is one person calling the shots. You can skip the process of all the argument and debating and voting, and you just have one dude or one dudette, right, making all the calls. That's efficient. But government is not necessarily good because it's efficient. The argument on which this line of reasoning is based is an assumption, a foundational premise that a good form of government is one that protects its citizens' basic rights, even if it's inefficient, even if it takes more work, even if it might cause some social instability. Democracy is better because it protects your citizens' basic rights. Okay? So that foundational premise has to be established before it glues together this claim and these reasons. Because these reasons have to do with what? The rights of individuals. If a government is not good, if a government's goodness is not connected to protecting its citizens' rights, then these reasons are illogical. They don't support the claim. So, in other words, democracy is only the best form of government if, right, governments are being measured by the extent to which they protect the basic rights of individuals. Okay? Now, we still have more work to do here. Even with this simple argument, all right, that many people would agree with, we've got to go through some significant reasoning to get to the end of this question. Okay, ready? the next thing that we need to do is to explain the evidence using commentary. Okay? Just because you say that a democracy is good because it equally represents each individual in the society in the process of in the legislative process or in the political process, doesn't mean that that is good. You have to explain to me why it's good. Why is it good for individuals to be equally represented in their government? How is that helpful? Why is that beneficial on a moral, philosophical, or functional level? Maybe you should talk about all three. Does representing individuals equally, whether rich or poor, whether white or black, does representing individuals equally in their government, is that actually good? Why is that a basic human right? Why is that good? Okay, so you would need to comment on, okay, and describe why this argument, this reason, is actually, ready, the best. Okay. You would also have to do that for guess what? Your second supporting argument, that consenting to the political system that orders your life is something that A, you have a right to, and B, is good, right? Why is it good for individuals not only to get to be equally represented, but also to get to consent to the political system that orders their lives on a moral and philosophical level, and also on a functional level? Why does that make a government work better? Okay. Why does that make a government more effective? Why does that make a society flourish? Why is that a good thing? Okay, does that make sense? So with this simple argument, all right, if you're going to support this argument, if this argument is going to be what we would call cogent, okay, not only do you need a contentious claim, okay, this is a contentious claim. Many people throughout history would disagree with this. Okay. Not only do you need a contentious claim, you also need evidence. You need some supporting reasons, some data that supports the claim. All right, here is our data that supports the claim. But in order for this data to support this claim effectively, we need to acknowledge the foundational premises that are at work in the line of reasoning. If those premises are not obvious, if those premises are not self-evident, then they need to be established and explained. In this particular argument, I think that this premise needs to be established and explained. Okay. After you establish and explain this premise, then you can get into the process of explaining and evidencing, all right, your supporting arguments with what we would call commentary. You need to describe why your supporting arguments actually support your claim. Okay? That's when it would probably be good to get into historical references, maybe even citing and quoting expert opinions from moral philosophers. Okay, you could quote Thomas Jefferson, you could quote John Locke, you could quote Thomas Hobbes, you could quote Voltaire, you could Diderot. Okay, all different kinds of philosophers throughout the course of human history who have made a similar kind of argument. All right. That kind of evidence would support your line of reasoning by establishing connections between your opinion and experts from history, famous people who are looked up to as individuals whose opinions matter about this topic. So, in other words, claim, evidence, commentary, and make sure that you understand the foundational premises that animate the conversation. If we do all these things together, our argument can be called cogent. Our argument can be called logical. All right, have a great day, you guys.